women who are having the access to the types of men they want don't complain about the standards and preferences of men. These all these social constructs that we're talking about, like women being the fairest sex, women don't complain about that. They don't complain about anything where being generous to women. They don't complain about any of those social constructs. They only complain about the ones that literally support whatever point they're trying to make that goes against the man. And we see examples of that, like not just this will probably be like the 300th example we've seen on this show, like in the years that I've been here. But it's what we see happening now because people forget that rights are a social construct, and if men in mass chose to, women would have no rights.
Well, I would argue that nature doesn't say what you think it says. We wouldn't have STDs, and so there is danger in having multiple sex partners, and nature does try to harm you when you do it. I mean, that's the reality of biology. I mean, even certain animal species have STDs and stuff like that. So I do think that while we can say, yes, it's nature, there are consequences, to True's point, to following nature in the things that, happen, which, we've seen it with certain epidemics, and we see it in Atlanta and DC now. Certain things pop up for certain things. But yeah, I do think that there is nature, right? Which I refer to sin nature because I am a Bible believer, but nature has revolted
Hey, Mark, I was about to do exactly what I told you to stop doing earlier when she made the point about STDs and fucking animals. But you see, I caught myself and I didn't do it. I just let the shop. Like, you know what? Maybe Mark going to get it for me. I know True will, but you see how I didn't attack the example instead of the you get it?
Yeah.
All right, that.
But so Becky, the reason that I don't the STD thing I don't think is strong is because even just because it's nature, animals don't care about STDs. Animals don't care about a lot of, they get ailments, just living in their normal life. Things are going to happen, like there's no STD test in nature. So there's no way to know that the person you're about to mate with has an STD or not, whether you wait with 1,000 people or, one person. So that particular point, I don't think is a strong one. Well,
that's an assumption though, isn't it, Mont? Because I mean, dogs can smell when you're pregnant. They can smell when you have cancer. They can smell when you're about to have a seizure. The assumption is that animals can't tell when other ones have diseases at certain points. And so I'd have to look up STDs in animal. I just found it interesting when I was looking up STDs in humans.
Hey, before you look that up, use the incognito window, because if you search STDs in animals, you're going on a watch list. So like, in like a throwaway phone, because that's wild.
Becky. So I think it's reasonable. I think it would be reasonable for us to maybe look at the closest thing we have to primitive humans and see what they say about STDs. Like, are you sniffing for STDs? And like, let's see what the tribes and stuff like that are doing when it comes to STDs.
I think that we got to give some credit to the fact that like whores and hookers are a phenomenon, and I'm going to use that word phenomenon because see, the excitement that men have of the access that those women give is uncommon, which is what makes them phenomenal, right? And I'm saying this from someone who's just observing reality. If nature was a woman's flow to be just open and just giving it away, every woman would be a hooker. She'd be out on the street. They'd all have OnlyFans. So that's where I argue nature. If this was just an everyday type of ordeal, then it wouldn't matter if he was tall, short, brown, light, wouldn't matter. Any man with a penis could get it. And that's just not how women carry themselves every single day. But hookers don't have that same standard from what I've observed. If you have money, they will do what you want them to do, which is what makes them a phenomenon. And it combats the whole, well, women do this too. I just don't see women being that fluid, in my opinion, especially sexually. And I like.
It's a little disingenuous, and I do respect and agree with the majority of the things that you said. And what we're not taking into consideration is society. So Bo and I are actually aligned in that. So we have nature versus nurture. And in social constructs, there's religion, there's belief systems that literally, when you are born as a child, you're domesticated into whatever system that is. So as an example, if I'm Asian and I come into that family, then more than likely I will have their traditions. And according to popularity, I perhaps may be a Buddhist. But if I am an African American woman who was born urban, then I may be a Christian per those societal norms. So when we say, if this were allowed, they would be doing it, then it takes out the fact that there are social constructs that literally control people's movements. We've been domesticated into belief systems. So now this is the way we do things. We have to follow these societal norms. So people may not act on whatever their, natural behavior is. They may have natural instincts, but they don't want to be shunned. They don't want society to look at them a certain way. They don't want to be, cast out from their families. Therefore, they follow social norms. I land there.
Okay, let's explore that. Now, I would like to respond. I hear you. I agree society has an influence on human behavior. However, what I do like to do is explore and sometimes observe when we are not at our maturation stage, when we're young. When you look at a little boy and a little girl, pre-being programmed, nature will tell you that it's at its highest point of operating, because little boys do things that are just natural, just like little girls do things that are natural. When you observe them in their element, little girls tend to flock around each other and then find whatever boy that they all deem to be the cutest of the bunch. And then they all fanboy over it. Just like little boys are just naturally nice to girls until they're taught something different or the influence is different. This is pre-understanding sex and all those dynamics. I think what happens is that we try to push an agenda of equality current day, that because certain men have been abusive to women sexually, women are hurt. And I think that they don't like the fact that some men get away with the fact that they can be a little loose with their penis. So in response to that, women want to be able to now explore that. And someone said it moments ago, there's really nothing stopping y'all. You guys can do whatever you want, which is why I said hyperbolically, if it was nature, every woman would be a hooker. It would be phenomenal, but that's not the truth. So I don't think that society, in my opinion, has that much influence, because society still current day stands in a way where we're trying to eradicate chaos, but then we have people who are fighting against it. So where is society currently standing? Are we open, fluid? Or are we static? Do we have standards or do we don't? Because it continues to move about. And that's why I'm arguing from a nature perspective. If women really wanted to be loose like that, they just would. And it would be consistent.
So 60 seconds to reply to that really quickly. I was following you when it comes to early childhood, which is pedagogy. Andragogy is adult studies and pedagogy is PD, child. So, but I thought you were going back to the very form before socialism came in. So if you were comparing, let's say, toddlers or younger, 1-year-olds who have not had social constructs applied to them, that would be something different. To say, I have a group of 1-year-olds that I babysit, and what are their behaviors, and comparing the behaviors. And in doing that, biologically, they are not much different. Now, when you talk about 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds that are given Barbie dolls, that are shown certain things on TV, that are shown, girl, you wear pink, little boys, you wear blue, that it's okay for you to respond like this. Little boy, you need to be tough. You have now past the point that we are just observing what they do naturally. Babies naturally cry, boy or girl. You have now applied what I'm talking about, which is domestication, on those children. So certainly, especially at that age, they absorb most things. That's their most critical learning phase. That certainly they have received constructs. So you can't remove societal constructs to rearing, and especially not that early on. If you're observing infants at their natural state when they first come out and they cry and scream and wet the diaper, that's one thing. But if you're comparing kids who have actually had social constructs applied to them, then it's still disingenuous. I land there.
So, question: we social constructs and these rules and all these things are only argued by the people who aren't the exception to them or don't benefit from them. Like, we don't see men complaining about we don't see men that Mont says, like all these bitches are mine. The men that get bitches don't complain about women being hypergamous because we understand where we fall in the pecking order of things. We don't complain about those things. Women who are having the access to the types of men they want don't complain about the standards and preferences of men. All these social constructs that we're talking about, like, women being the fairest sex, women don't complain about that. They don't complain about anything where, being generous to women. They don't complain about any of those social constructs. They only complain about the ones that literally support whatever point they're trying to make that goes against the man. And we see examples of that, like not just, this would probably be like the 300th example we've seen on this show, like in the years that I've been here. But it's what we see happening now because people forget that, rights are a social construct. And if men en masse chose to, women would have no rights. They could easily just, every man said, you women don't get to vote. You women get whatever we give you. And there would be nothing they could do about it. But because of that social construct, that morality that we have, and that we treat women as the weaker sex, and we view them as that's why we protect them. And we treat them as if they're the weaker sex en masse. The majority of women aren't out here being mistreated by men. The majority of women aren't out here having these, misandrous talking points about men. The majority of women aren't having negative experiences with men. But the ones that we hear from the most, the ones that get the most shine, the ones that have these different platforms, those are the ones that we hear about, and they're the ones that make it seem as if all the experiences with men are bad. I love the fact that men generally think that if you see a woman, you should open the door for her. That's dope. I like that. That's how it should be. I want someone that's my daughter. But then I also want to make sure that we understand that, hey, by accepting some of these social constructs and standards, you're going to also have to be accepting the others unless you're willing to be a hypocrite. And I would hope most women